Today we have an exciting and special episode. Some of you may know that I'm currently attending a short course in London, and our group's coach is a woman who is a singer, writer, librettist, audio director, and so much more, and she was kind enough to accept my request to be on the show. Please welcome Tamsin Collison. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I was very intimidated to ask you, so thank you.
No, thank you for inviting me.
So my first question is, one of my favorite questions to ask people is, how does one get your job? How do you become a director for audiobooks?
Goodness. Well, I don't think there's a route. You can't study it at media college. You can't say, when I grow up, that's what I want to be, and find an obvious path. It's something, I think, partly because the industry has developed autonomously over the last 30 years. When I started working in audiobooks, I was constantly asked, oh, is that for the blind? Everybody assumed that you were doing charity recordings for the blind, because for years in the UK, the Royal National Institute for the Blind, known as the RNIB, has taken it upon itself to record most of the important titles and a lot of the less important ones for non-sighted people. Also things like newspapers and magazines and washing machine manuals and all sorts. So spoken word for the blind, in inverted commas, has been a thing for quite a while. But I can't remember the last time somebody asked me that. The industry, I actually, to be honest, I've never done an audiobook for the blind. I hope that doesn't mean they don't listen to the audiobooks I do, but I've not done specifically for the RNIB library work, which used to be the way you started to do audiobooks. You'd go and work for them either as an actor reading for the blind or as a producer, engineer, recording the books. But in the last 20 years, as you probably know, because of your podcast, the industry has exploded.
Oh, yeah, well, with creation of Audible making what used to be books on tape so easily accessible to the general population for not a lot of money every month.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because, 10, 15 years ago, people were saying, the spoken word's going to die. Nobody's listening to spoken word radio. It's all music. And now people have got portable, in the old days, Walkmans, iPods. And now people seem to be Bluetoothed into some mad cloud somewhere. They're not carrying any devices at all. They're all walking around very Doctor Who. But in the... So in the past, there was an understanding that spoken word was going to die out, and that the new generation would come along with only interest in music. And in fact, the reverse has happened, particularly with the explosion of the podcast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know? I mean, 10 years ago, it felt like podcasts were starting to lose it, and now they're more popular than ever.
Exactly. And, I teach at a drama school in London, and I speak to a lot of students, 18, 19, 20, and I ask them when I first meet them, who has a listening habit and who listens to the radio, and a few people put their hands up and then they go, well, I listen with my mum. And then you go, okay, well, who listens to podcasts? And everybody's hand goes up. People are as likely to be walking along listening to the spoken word on their headphones as they are to be listening to music. 15 years ago, it was definitely music they were listening to. Yeah. So the industry has gone absolutely the opposite way to the way people thought that it would. So to go back to your question, I started off in BBC radio drama.
How exciting.
It was very exciting. It was a deeply cool job. I had such a good time. I was there for about 4 years, and I worked with all kinds of really exciting people, and I was very lucky. I worked with one of the best radio drama directors the BBC produced in his heyday, he was doing things. One of his most famous achievements was for the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. He did, I think it was called The Hollow Crown.
Okay.
Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was called, I think it had another name. Vivat Rex. It's called Vivat Rex. And it was the history of Britain from Edward II to Henry VIII through plays of the time. So Edward II, Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe.
I know this isn't a visual medium, but I just grabbed my chest.
She grabbed her heart and palpitated. Sorry. It's all right, hyperventilated. I mean.
It sounds so amazing. Continue.
So starting with Edward II, and then there are pretty much history plays by writers of the time right up to Henry VIII. Some of them not so good as others. But they linked the plays together with a few lines written by Martin Jenkins, who was the director I worked with, in blank verse to link the plays together. And those were read by Richard Burton.
Whoa.
And then I don't know if the other names will mean much to your listeners, but some of the greatest British actors of the 50s, 60s, 70s, some of the old grandees were in the series. So Peggy Ashcroft, Michael Redgrave, John Gielgud, Ralph Richardson, that lot were playing the elder statesmen. And interestingly, John Hurt, who your guys might know from Ollivander from Harry Potter.
Yes.
He's the dragon in Merlin. I don't know if Merlin made it to America, but the voice of the animated dragon. Caligula in the great BBC series I, Claudius. I mean, just one of our great actors. He played Edward II. This was before my time, but this was Martin's big. He did it with another director between them. Great big opus to mark the Queen's Silver Jubilee. But I fell in love with radio drama when I was a kid, so it was wonderful to end up working there. But I remember somebody telling me, we have this saying in radio, and I think it goes on to, it applies as well to audiobooks as it does to radio drama with multiple actors, which is, in radio, the pictures are better. Listening to a spoken word is one step up from reading a book to yourself. Mm-hmm. You still have the freedom to visualise the characters and the places as you see them.
Oh, absolutely. That's why women prefer reading things versus men usually like to see things, is because I want to cast it myself.
Exactly. And you can't unknow something once you've seen a film version of it.
It's so hard to forget.
Yeah,
it's like we were saying. What was that show you almost gave up on? Was it King Lear?
Oh, King Lear, yeah.
Like after you've seen it so many times poorly, you're like, I don't know that it can ever get fixed.
Yeah. And then suddenly it's fixed. But Harry Potter is a great example. A lot of kids, perhaps fewer now that the films are all finished, but a lot of kids came to those books book first. Or Stephen Fry in the UK, Jim Dale in America, reading them. When they came to see the film, it doesn't necessarily look like what they've imagined, but once you've seen that realisation of that world, it's almost impossible to remember what you saw in your head before you saw the film.
Absolutely. So that makes sense. The pictures are better.
Absolutely.
It's what you want.
Pictures are better. So just to give you, just to go back to Edward II, one of the other things I love about sound is that if you watch Game of Thrones and you watch some awful thing being done to some poor person, a bit of your brain's going, oh, this is safe, this is fine, because I've seen him on a chat show since. Or they'd never actually allow us to watch someone stamping on someone else's head. They wouldn't do that. Health and safety. So even while you're watching it, a bit of your brain's going, I know that's not happening. If you can't see it and it's done well, you cannot prove it didn't happen. And
that's so devious.
When they did, I don't know if you know how. Actually, what age group is this podcast for?
Mostly adults.
Okay.
Mostly I know we tend to swear a little bit, mostly me. My co-host is better about it than I am.
So, do you know how Edward II met his end?
No.
Okay. King Edward II, and this is true, kids, met his end, please excuse me for being so graphic, but with a red-hot poker up the bum.
Oh, okay.
This was partly in punishment for his blatant homosexuality at the time. But also, I read somewhere, because you couldn't prove from the front that anything had happened. You could lie him out in state and there would be no evidence that he had been murdered.
Right.
So it was a kind of very extreme sort of stab in the back, so to speak. Awful way to go. And Christopher Marlowe makes the most of it in his play, Edward II.
Oh, no.
So we had John Hurt playing Edward II. And when it came to the murder of Edward II, one of the things about audio, and it applies to podcasts too, audiobooks too, if you have to park your self-consciousness at the door. If there's an accent you're not sure about, you can't play that character hoping for the best, because we'll hear the actor's doubt behind the character. If you do a funny voice, really do the funny voice. Don't think I feel a bit silly doing this. Mm-hmm. And in radio drama, you've got to believe in the imaginary world your characters are inhabiting 100%, because you are very often not doing what you say you're doing. You very often don't look like who you're pretending to be. Wildlife, animals, is often played by people, because you don't have the sound effect of a pug dog being thrown out of a stagecoach window.
It blew my mind the other day. I found out a lot of the roaring in The Lion King is a guy with a garbage can.
Yeah.
Roaring into the garbage can in my childhood is a lie.
but yes, it's not a lie, is it?
But yes, I never would have known had I not seen the clip of the guy being into the can.
Foley, that's the job to get. If I had my time again, that's what I would do. Sound effects for movies, because it's the same stuff that you do for radio, but for film. Anyway, just to finish the Edward story, poor old John Hurt, apparently, I wasn't there, but I was a mere child. But Martin had him stretched out on a table in the studio, held down by 2 or 4 people, one per limb, so that he had something to struggle against. And then they had a studio manager, which is like a Foley artist, with a bucket of water and an electric kettle element.
Oh my God.
She's gone green. And at the moment that they applied the poker to his hindquarters, she plunged the kettle element into the bucket of water, and he let out screams like we heard in King Lear on Wednesday. I mean, unearthly shrieks. Oof. It's thought that he actually died of a heart attack because of the shock of it. I mean, if the shock doesn't kill you.
Yeah, you know, I mean...
the fall don't kill you, the landing will. But... well, I remember hearing that story and going, I so want to work in that way. My God, that's so exciting.
Can you just imagine being the intern who had to go home and be like, I had to hold John Hurt down?
Well, he died of shock.
A national treasure.
Yeah. Another thing they did was when they were beheading, I learned how to behead people from Martin. Not literally. But you may have heard, it's a very, very famous, long coconut hooves for horses, but that you behead people on the radio with a cabbage.
Slicing
well, you need 2. You need one to slice into, you need one to drop and roll around.
That's wonderful.
But you also need arterial spray.
Oh, because blood.
So you're there playing the Duke of whoever is in I can't remember which character it is in Edward II, same play. He gets caught on a highway and they say, no, we're going to execute you here, tough luck. And they swipe his head off. So you've got the crunch of a knife going into one, you've got somebody else dropping, and you've got someone else with a cup of water going, chucking water onto the pavement for the sound of the blood spurting out. I really didn't think this conversation was going to go this way.
We're one question in and we've got to beheading. It took 13 minutes. Congratulations.
You can just keep this for your project. You don't need to use it. But it is in seriousness, the freedom in audio to be anyone, do anything, and as long as every actor in the room believes the scenario and is in the same imaginary space, you will take the audience with you wherever you want to go. So there's a little thing, you can tag that on wherever you want.
Yes, no, that's wonderful.
But I didn't actually answer your question.
No, I mean,
how did I get into it?
No, you did. I mean, it's a weird question to get. It was like, how does one get become what you become?
Okay.
It's
Let me give you a short version
of that answer.
So I started my career in BBC radio drama, and I was there for about 4 years, and I was extremely blessed. I worked with a brilliant director, and I learned from him on the job about what audio could be and do, and how to get really good performances out of actors quickly. I then went and worked in an independent radio company for another period, and did all kinds of different programme making, not drama, but I started to produce readings while I was there, some for the BBC and some for elsewhere. And then I went freelance. And when I went freelance, the audio industry was just starting to expand. I was working at HarperCollins, and I met this lady who was the audio editor there. Gave her my CV on the last day. So here's a moral for you guys. I screwed up my courage on the last possible day I could possibly go down and see her, because I was very nervous, and I knocked on the door and I said, "You don't know me, but I've been working upstairs and I'm really keen and interested." And, for once, when people say, "We'll keep your details on file," you don't believe them.
No.
But sometimes people do. And then it's just being good at it. It's being, when as Hamlet says, the readiness is all. If you're good at it and you have confidence and you do a good job, then you will, it's a word of mouth thing as much as anything. And so gradually I started to work for all the publishers, the major publishers in the UK. Did a couple of things for HarperCollins New York, but sadly not in New York, in Hammersmith.
The New York of Britain.
The New York of Britain, the big apple of London. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I, as Audible expanded and started to get really big, and they started to trawl around for professional producers who got some experience and got some form, and they got in touch with quite a lot of us who'd been around for 10, 15 years. So I'm now meeting all the people I used to work with at radio drama in the corridors at Audible. So I work for them as well now. And in fact, increasingly, studios are hiring directors to record for publishers, whereas it used to be publishers came directly to you and then you had to find a studio and do the casting. Now they tend to do that. It's interesting, the departments have got bigger inside the publishing houses so that they now do their own casting, book their own studios, and you are one of the resources they book, whereas when they were starting out, they just needed somebody who knew about studios and about casting and could direct. So you were doing their job for them. Exactly. And so now... but interestingly, at the same time, because Audible has expanded, not Audible, audio in general, audiobooks have exploded, but they're trying to keep the prices down to consumer levels. Audible's aim is that you can buy an audiobook for the same price as the book. Mm-hmm. But, when that's 15 hours of finished audio and you've been in studio for a week, the margins for the people who are making them are very slim. I've got an important point.
I believe you.
An important point. Yes. So when I started, it would be me and an engineer and the actor, a team of 3. So I would be doing the directing and I'd be making the notes on the script for the editor of mistakes and pickups and retakes, and there's a door slam here, there's a helicopter passing here, all the things that you have to watch out for when you're doing audio. But as the margins shrank, most producers now engineer as well.
Oh, okay.
So the job is now producer, director, engineer and production assistant all at once, and it's just a team of 2.
Woo! Woo!
Yeah, so you're taking all the responsibility. And I miss not having somebody at my side that I can say, did you think that was right? Could that be funnier? Could that be sadder? Did they get that? Would you say controversy or controversy? You know, you're now having to make all the decisions yourself. And you have to be on top of it so that the actor trusts you. You can't sit there going, well, I don't know.
Oh, that's how you end up with penglings and penwigs.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
how you end up with that poor situation, that poor man. Next question was, how much research would you say you put into each book you direct, like the pronunciation of word, context of the books and the settings, that kind of stuff?
It's really important. It's really important, particularly now that you're the only person on the production side of the glass. Hopefully you're working with an actor who has also done the work, but not always. And I will always rehire an actor who has prepped the last book I did with them over someone who's waltzed in going, so what's this about?
Oh boy.
It just happened a few times and it's unforgivable.
Oh, I can't imagine.
It's unforgivable.
I can't imagine.
It's like turning up at the National Theatre and not having bothered to go to the rehearsals and thinking you can wing it in front of 20,000 people. And this is millions of people. Why would you not want to have thought about it? But anyway. So yes, when I get a script, if non-fiction is harder than fiction because you're more likely to have pronunciation issues with a non-fiction book. For example, a few years ago I did a book called, I think it was called Armageddon, and it was about the final year of World War II and the Allied pincer movement around Germany to finish the war off.
So a lot of
German, Prussian, Russian, Dutch, British names. They were all real people. So there were letters and diary, and there were generals. There were military ranks. There were all kinds of man traps and things to check. The Russian army was the worst because there's no rule to which syllable in a Russian name is going to be stressed. It isn't always the penultimate syllable that's stressed. So it's not Anna Pavlova, it's Anna Pavlova, the ballerina. It's Natalia Makarova, not Natalia Makarova. But so it's, you can't just go, oh, it's always the penultimate syllable, because it isn't.
It isn't.
But the worst names in that book were the Americans, because in 1944 a lot of them were first generation immigrants who had anglicised European names, and there were several ways you could say them. I asked American actors I knew in London, and they didn't know how to say some of these names, and they're real people, and you kind of feel, well, I'm not a superwoman, there's only so much I can do, and there's only so much time I can spend hunting these names down. So, but yes, I've had some interesting time. I mean, for anyone out there who's gets stuck with this kind of situation, there's a fantastic website called forvo.com, FORVO.com, which stands for For Voiceovers.
Oh.
And it is a resource, it's an online resource, it's a website that does an awful lot of proper names and places pronounced by native speakers from different countries.
Oh, how cool.
So you can click on
Dang.
Paris, and if you want to know how English people say Paris, click on English and you'll get Paris. Click on French, you'll get Paris. Click on Spanish, you'll get Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So you, as a actor, need to think, how is the person who is talking going to, what nationality are they, and how do they need to pronounce it? And just make sure you check the right box for that. I've looked on TED Talks, I've looked on news reports on YouTube. The best one I had, best/worst one, I did a book called The Piano Tuner by an American, one of those people who he's finding a cure for cancer and writing a best-selling novel, and he's 25, one of them. It's kind of like Heart of Darkness. He's called Daniel Masson, I think. It's like Heart of Darkness, but set in Burma, and it's about a Victorian piano tuner who goes to tune the piano of a mad colonel. And
As one does.
Lots of Burmese names and places. And this was before Forvo and the easily accessible pronunciation resources on the internet. And I rang the Burmese embassy in London. But when I said that I wanted to speak to somebody because it was for a recording, they cut me off because they were very suspicious and closed down at the time. They didn't want, it was all very sort of security conscious, and they didn't understand that it was for a fictional reading. Mm-hmm. They just went, no, we're not helping you. So I panicked. What am I going to do? And I thought, I know, I will ring the Free Aung San Suu Kyi campaign office. She, at the time, was the Burmese leader in waiting. She had been under house arrest for years and years because the regime didn't agree with her, or she didn't agree with the regime. So there was a campaign that they won in the end. She was liberated and ran the country for a while. But at this point, she was in under house arrest. And so I emailed them and I said, I've got a list of Burmese places and names and I don't know what to do. And they gave me the name of an email address of a Burmese monk. And I emailed him and I said, could I possibly call you and check these with you? And he said, yes, call me tomorrow on my mobile phone, which I did. We went through all the names. There was one he didn't know. I got to the studio on the day, and the actor turned up. While I was waiting for the actor, I tried to find this name in a book that was in the studio, a Dictionary of World Place Names, and it was there, but it said, currently pronounced blah, blah, blah. In the imperial days, pronounced completely differently. And I went absolutely white, and I thought, I didn't tell that monk that it was a Victorian novel. I think I've got the contemporary pronunciations. And of course, when Burma reclaimed their independence, they changed all the pronunciations back. So so I panicked. There was one man in the country who ran tours to Burma at the time, and he'd been away when I was looking for the pronunciations. So I rang this number, and the actor had arrived. I was like, I'll be 5 minutes. Rang this number. He was there. He'd come back from a trip. He said, I don't know, but my father-in-law used to be the Burma correspondent for The Economist. I'll see if he's in. Hold on a minute.
Oh, wonderful.
He rang his father-in-law, who was 83, who was in. So I said to the actor, bye, boy. Rang him up, and every single one was different. I was on the phone for 40 minutes.
But you got it.
I got it.
Oh my God.
I got it. We didn't finish till 8 o'clock, but I got it.
That, research-based historian in me is like, oh, when you think you've got it, but then you don't.
And Canada. I did a book called The Wild Geese, which is a memoir of somebody following the migratory path of the geese from Florida to Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And beyond, into Canada and up to the top. And he gets up to the Canadian border. He gets on a train and he travels through Canada by train and looks out of the window and clocks all the stations along the way. So there's this big list in the book of Canadian stations, which could be French pronunciations or English pronunciations or native pronunciations.
I was going to say it's probably indigenous in English, more like on that side of the continent.
Yeah, but you
never know. You never know.
So and of course, when I contacted the author, he didn't know because he'd been on the train. He'd just written them down. I ended up emailing Chief Grey Eye of a particular native tribe. And it was the weirdest feeling in the world to go Chief Grey Eye at ... you know. And he was brilliant. He emailed me back. He gave me all the right pronunciation. So you have to think laterally sometimes. If you can't find the answer immediately on your go-to list of resources that you have to be creative.
Well, for example, in Alaska, up until I think it was either last fall or the fall previous, Denali, the biggest mountain in North America, was called Mount McKinley. And 2 years ago or a year ago, it got changed back to Denali, which is what its indigenous name is, and to the native peoples of Alaska has always been Denali. So very much in that same way, if you were writing a story 3 years ago, you'd have to call it McKinley, Mount McKinley, and if you're writing it now, it'd be Mount Denali.
Absolutely. So, well, an audio producer's best friend is their contact book. Now I've met you, if I have anything set in Alaska, I will be emailing you.
I got your back. I can help you so much.
It's really important. It's really important because on a serious note, audio is a contract of trust between listener and performer and reader. And I will believe anything you say, both in audiobook or drama, until I don't. And the minute I don't believe you, you've lost me. And that could be a hesitation on a word, because I then think the illusion that you're creating with an audiobook is that you're not being read to, that you're being talked to, that a story's being remembered, or advice is being given, or instructions on how to meditate are being given by someone who knows what they're talking about. Anyone could sit and read out a manual. That is not good audio. Good audio is sharing information or emotion or story with an ear, a listening ear. It's an absolutely interactive relationship between performer and consumer, audience, listener, whatever you want to call it. So if you are doing a book about Alaska and you mispronounce that mountain,
oh gosh,
immediately anyone who knows that is going to stop.
There's a couple acceptable ways to pronounce this specific word, but the one widely used is Denina. And if you saw the word written out, you would not assume that's what it is. And it's a running gag in Alaska that you can tell when a commercial was made out of state, because like there's Denina is a native peoples and land. And also there's a Denina Convention Center. So you'll hear Friday at the Ina Center, and we're like, who made this?
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen Irish written down?
Yes.
Sinead. Sinead. It's pronounced Sinead.
One of my niece's names is oh gosh, I forgot what it is. Saoirse.
Saoirse.
Yeah,
and that's spelt complete. And Niamh, which is spelt something like Niamh or Nimah. It looks like Nima, and it's Niamh.
And as I call myself unilingual, people look at that and go, I don't know what I'm doing, someone help.
Yeah, but your responsibility as a producer and as an artist is to walk into that studio knowing that you've got it right. Because why should somebody pay their $12 to someone who hasn't bothered to look it up?
Right.
So I would say, as a producer director, your job is to come, particularly with fiction, particularly your job is to come with an idea of all the characters, who you think the characters are. Definitely knowing what the authorial voice is. You don't want to do a book that's ironical and miss that, or it totally misfires, but with enough of an open heart and open ear that if the actor brings something else, you will consider it. It's a collaboration. The actor begins their performance and you as the director adjust what they're doing. You're the first pair of ears listening to their performance and saying, well, maybe that's not so fun. Oh, you could leave a little bit more of a beat between, and maybe the stones won't come out ever. It's funnier than, or maybe the stones won't come out ever. A little bit. You just try it again and leave a bit more. So you're kind of orchestrating the performance, but you can't say, no, it doesn't go like that. It goes like this. If the actor hears it differently, you need to meet in the middle, or it doesn't work. The actor needs to come knowing absolutely who everybody is and what they want to do with it. A marked up script with all the characters speaking in different colours, or writing the initials of every character by the side and having a key beside it.
Narration is this color, this character is this color.
Or putting the character's initials and then having a crib sheet that's got, tall, blonde, iron shirts, dry humour, things that you've picked out of the book while you've been prepping it. write yourself a crib list, and then when you see JP on the list, you look up and it says, oh yes, he's the detective inspector. He's tall, blonde, 50s, wears a crisply ironed shirt and has a dry sense of humour. That's going to affect. It's not just a Scottish accent. It's that Scottish accent, which means that you can then have 3 Scots policemen talking to each other, and you'll still know who's who.
Oh yeah.
So, and it's the fun as well.
And you can tell when care has been taken on that and when it has not. I think it's the Red Necklace that Tom Hiddleston did the voiceover for. There's no question when he switches from character to character. Absolutely not. And then there's another one that I won't name recently that I listened to that I was like, I'm very aware this is the same person just talking in a higher voice.
Yeah. And it's one of the difficult things when you're an actor is, 2 pages of dialogue with no he said or she said or name checks. That's a stylistic thing you see sometimes, really? Yes. What do you mean? Take a minute and you've got to go through and figure out how many people are in that conversation, who's speaking when, and, what the speed or the dynamic of that conversation is. And it doesn't say he snapped, she yelped, he hesitated before saying, it's just dialogue. And that can, if you don't mark that up with sort of musical notes, forte and crescendo and stuff, or nowadays with you guys, emojis. I can't bear emojis, but little emojis in the margins for the emoji. There's nothing worse than doing a huge speech, and at the end it says, "By now she was crying so hard I could barely understand her." If you haven't put a little sort of weepy face at the top of that speech,
start getting sad,
you're going to have to do it again. Because the audience won't believe you. They'll have bought it and believed you, and then suddenly that line says she's crying and you're not. Then they're not going to buy it, and you've lost them again.
A temporary suspension of disbelief out the window.
Yeah, and the minute it's shuttered, it takes forever to get it back.
Yeah,
and because and I think it's unforgivable because there is no excuse. It's pre-recorded. You can go back and fix it. So. The more you prep in advance, both as director and reader, the more fun you can have in studio. I mean, I was very lucky. I did a massive, great Charles Dickens book last year called Dombey and Son, which is 1,000 pages long, almost for Audible, and it's brilliant, guys. And it was read by a Welsh actor called Owen Teale, who he's just aces it. He's brilliant.
I love a Welsh accent.
Yeah,
I truly do.
Dombey and Son set in London. He didn't have a Welsh accent as the narrator, but I didn't make him cut it out completely. So it had a little bit of a lilt, but it had that wonderful kind of sonorousness that Welsh has. But most of the characters, London, or what we call RP over here, like plain neutral English for the kind of educated business class of people, characters in the book. But there's there's a guy, and Dickens wrote for actors. Dickens was an actor, and in fact there's an anecdote about somebody watching through Dickens's study window, and he would act a line out in front of the mirror and then go and write it down, then go back to the mirror and act the other part and go and write it down. So it's a gift for an actor, and it's a great gym. Girls and boys, if you want to know how to read a book aloud, get yourself a chunk of Dickens, and if you can do that, you can do anything. But there's one character, there's a captain, a sea captain called Captain Cuttle, who's written like Long John Silver. You can't do it except, "Oh, my lad!" It's written like that, so you have to do that. But there's another sea captain who's a minor character, but a brilliant character, called Captain... Oh God, the names escape me. Anyway, he's a minor but important character, and there was no reason why he shouldn't be Welsh. Captain Bunsby, and so we made him full on Welsh, and it was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious, and he had not prepped him like that, and I hadn't heard him like that. But in the room with him, just thinking, like you say, love a Welsh accent. There's got to be somewhere we can get someone Welsh in here, and it just worked so brilliantly so being open to kind of play in the room is also really... So the relationship between actor and director, you have to create almost instantly, because you walk into a room, one person sits down and the other person starts criticising them. That's basically what it is, for 3 days together, having never met each other before. So you have to find a way of working
Well, I know we've never met. Yeah, you did this wrong. Try again.
Exactly. And
super fun.
And as an actor, you have to be able to accept that if it's a decent director, anytime they tweak or criticise what you're saying, it's because they want it to be better. Mm-hmm. Not that they're scoring points off you, but that they can hear that if you just did that, or that you don't actually pronounce that word like that, if you pronounce it wrong, no one ever bothers to find out who produced anything. So it will just go out into the air and everyone will think you don't know how to pronounce it. Not that I didn't correct you, because nobody knows I was there.
Penlings.
So opinions. So I'm on your side, and the criticism comes with love. But sometimes that just can get a bit kind of I'm trying, and you go, yeah, but you just don't say pingling, you say penguin.
So we'll wrap this up. Last question.
Sorry, yes. No. I hope some of this is useful.
Oh, so much. So my last question is my absolute favorite question to ask everybody is, what are you excited about right now? It can be work related, life related, anything. Nice. What are you looking forward to this moment?
Oh, so I'm looking forward to this moment. Is a whole day of Shakespeare tomorrow.
Yay!
With you.
I'm so excited. I'm also excited about that, but that doesn't have to be your answer.
Goodness, that's a big question.
I know. I'm sorry.
I suppose I am excited about the fact that I'm doing my first jazz gig for 2 years in November with a friend of mine called Jill Cook, and we are doing an evening of songs recorded by a very cool jazz artist from the 50s in America called June Christie, who's a kind of combination of Peggy Lee and Doris Day. She's kind of in between the two.
How fun!
Deeply cool. Check out Something Cool on the song she was most famous for, on the album she's most famous for, is called Something Cool, and Something Cool is a really, really cool ballad. And on the if you look her up on YouTube and you type in June Christie Something Cool, you just see her singing this on, I don't know, Johnny Carson or something, with a cocktail by the piano, and it's just so classy and so cool. So I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't done any work for it yet, so I've got to pull my finger out and get going. But
that's exciting.
Yeah, that's something to look forward to. That's not work related and not imminent, but is something that if I say it out loud when it's true, I know I'm going to have to do something about it.
Yeah, now you've committed. Where can my listeners find you out on the Insta web material?
I have a website, which is Tamsin Collison, all one word, .co.uk. Mm-hmm. And at the moment I also have a Twitter handle which is @loverrhyme, because with a different hat on I write lyrics and librettos, but I'm seriously thinking about coming off Twitter because it's so depressing at the moment. I just can't bear it.
Yeah, no, it's a lot.
It's just a constant stream of dead elephants and crap politicians and global warming, and you just want to watch cats falling off stuff,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tamsin, for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Good luck with the rest of your podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you for including me.